Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. Welcome to another episode in our debut Spotlight series, where we shine a light on the freshest authors and their work. Today, that spotlight is on Bar Fridman-Tell and her debut novel, Honeysuckle. Honeysuckle has been described as a feminist Frankenstein with flowers. It tells the story of Rory and his flower girl, Day, a friend that was weaved together for Rory by his sister Wyn to save him from loneliness. The only issue is, when the seasons change, the girl rots with them, and so begins Rory's dark and obsessive quest to keep his creation alive. This is one of the most unique novels that I have come across and has been rightfully raved about as one to watch by numerous publications, including Goodreads, Literary Hub, Publishers Weekly, and CBC, to name a few. It was also selected as an Indie Next Pick for April 2026 and as one of Apple Books' Best Books of March. Author of Honeysuckle, Bar Fridman-Tell, is a writer based in Toronto. Bar has a BA in art history and an MA in English literature. She has held many a bookish role professionally, having previously worked as a bookseller, a translator, and a library assistant. Bar is currently studying for her Masters in Library and Information Science. Honeysuckle is her debut novel and is published by Bloomsbury in the US, Simon & Schuster in Canada, and Nightfire in the UK. And here to discuss it with us, welcome Bar to A Pair of Bookends.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited to get into you and your book. But before we start with Honeysuckle, I do like to ask what you're currently reading.
So I am the most awful serial. Like I read 3 books at a time, always. And right now my brain is pretty flimsy, so it's getting worse. But
3
I'm
books
reading...
at a time.
Yes, I'm honestly reading 5 right now, but I'll like
5.
So
crazy.
Yes, I'm blaming publication week for that.
Fair.
Yeah.
And what are they?
Cameron Sullivan's The Red Winter, which is amazing. It's historical fantasy. It's about 18th century French werewolf, like historical werewolf, and it's witty and smart and gorgeous, and like I want to steal his book. I want to write this book. And I'm comfort rereading Kelly Link's short story collection, White Cat, Black Dog, which is one of my favorites. And it's fairy tales gone feral, basically.
Love that. And
also the 3rd book in Dungeon Crawler Carl, because Princess Donut forever. Like, if something will happen to Princess Donut, there will be consequences. I'm just saying.
That's fair. So a real mixed bag then of books.
Yes.
How does your brain manage to keep up with 3 books at once?
I'm just used to it. I've always read a few books at a time. Like when I worked as a translator, I used to listen to audiobooks while translating. So wow. I think sort of trained my brain.
Yeah.
For that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, your brain is able to cope with a lot of different things at once. So you're listening to the audiobook of the book you're translating or of a different book?
I was translating mostly like commercial stuff. So I was listening to the book and translating the commercial stuff that are totally different. And
oh my gosh.
Worked mostly. Nobody ever complained.
Pretty iconic to be able to do that. Let's get into your writing journey. I love to start these episodes by asking what a debut author's journey has been like into, towards their publication. Now, your book, Honeysuckle, is out in the US and Canada now, I think. It isn't it?
Next week.
Next week. Sorry, okay.
So 5 days from now?
Amazing. And then when this episode is released, it is only a few days away from release in the UK. So I would love to know what this journey has been like into, writing your debut novel and in the lead up to publication. How are you feeling? How's it been?
Honestly, it's been pretty magical so far.
I love that.
I think the funny thing is that I was always writing, but I was sure I wanted to be a poet pretty much until the last year of my undergraduate. And then I was forced to take a prose seminar for like various reasons and fell in love and never looked back. And Honeysuckle is, I think, the first novel that I not only wrote, but also like went the extra mile of revising and like finding beta readers and finding critique partners and doing all that. And I think because I was really fresh out of my master's, I sort of treated querying as a bit of a research project and spent a month learning everything I could about it. And I think because of it, it wasn't as bad as it could have been because I was really like, I will know everything. I will be as ready as possible.
You came prepared.
Yes. So yeah, and it wasn't too long. And then I signed with my amazing agent, Hillary, and we did rounds of edits together and went on submission. And it was pretty fast-ish. Like, I feel like it wasn't like super fast, but it was fast-ish. It was fast compared to what I was expecting. And I got to work with basically three dream publishers and three editors that I adore and made the book so much better.
That's
I'm
wonderful.
sorry, it feels like it's not a very exciting journey.
No, I think that's wonderful. You know, it's actually really nice and refreshing to hear that somebody's had, like, you know, they've reached success fairly quickly in terms of, you know, you were figuring this book out during your masters or at the end of your masters, and then, you know, you've put the work in to figure out what's the best way to query, and then it's happened for you. Like, that's amazing. That's what, you know, a lot of writers want. So it's a book that deserves success. So it's you know, it's really nice to hear that you've had a positive journey with it so far. I really want to know what the sort of initial, you said that you had this prose seminar that you were forced into, but what was the sort of initial spark that led to this story?
So I think I always really, really loved the story of Blodeuwedd from Welsh mythology. It's in the Mabinogion, and I came across it, I think, as a teenager and fell absolutely in love. It's a myth about a girl made out of flowers to be a wife to overcome a curse, basically, because her husband can't take a human wife, and who is later turned into an owl as punishment for choosing a different life or a different path for herself. And I always adored it because it's gorgeous and magical and amazing, but it never sat well with me that she was the villain when she never had any choices or agency, and her body kept being changed without her consent. And I was at a point of my life, I just finished my master's and my husband was doing his postdoc. So we were moving around, which meant putting my life on hold for a bit and like basically becoming suddenly a dependent because I was following him. And we were together for 10 years. We knew it was coming. We prepared as much as possible. And he's like my best friend and my biggest cheerleader. And still the experience of suddenly becoming, for all intents and purposes, dependent on him was very jarring. And I think it made me come back to the story from fresh perspective and really like think about what it meant for her to be created for someone, to have her whole life hinging on someone else. And I think from that mix, Honeysuckle was created. It was my way of sort of asking myself if a relationship with such a huge power disparity can end in any way other than tragedy, even with the best intentions.
I mean, it's a really powerful myth, would you describe it? But yeah,
I think myth.
Mythology,
I think,
story.
like, every time you go into that, is it myth or not discussion, there'll be like 10 researchers ready to jump at you screaming. But like, I call it a myth. I think it's generally classified as a myth.
Yeah. I mean, it's really powerful, but I hadn't actually come across it before. So I'm really glad that you've sort of brought it to my attention. And I think what you've done with that myth, we're going to call it a myth for this, what you've done with that is so incredible. I think I want to start with the fact that the story sort of opens with two siblings. We have Rory and Wyn. And Rory, for the listeners, Rory is Wyn's younger brother. He's around 8, I think, when she decides as a teenage girl that she no longer wants to play with her little brother. And so she creates Day for him. Could you tell us a bit about their dynamic and what this act of creating Day means for their relationship?
I feel like I'm an older sister. I have 3 very much younger siblings. So it was very interesting for me to look at it from the other way around, like trying to imagine how I look my baby sister.
Yeah.
And how this dynamic would work. And I really tried to make it as believable as possible. And also really ground Day's creation in teenagers being idiots and not considering
it's not
any
a best decision.
I should create for my baby brother a human-like creature that will fall apart 2 months and not tell him about it. Sure, that's a reasonable
Normal,
solution to the
yeah.
problem of him
Yeah,
annoying me.
totally.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Oh yeah, it's a wild choice that she makes. But I was really curious about their relationship because they are quite isolated, and I don't think, from what I recall, that we find out what's happened to their parents. I think we're aware that they've sort of left, and their siblings are living in this house, and there's these like two sort of members of staff that sort of like housekeepers, and they're not really well tended to as children. What would you say their sort of home life is like?
I think it's like mentioned very much in passing because I really wanted to like not focus on that their
Yeah.
parents sort of divorced and decided that the solution to who's taking the kids is no one is taking the kids and like let the nanny take care of them.
Let the nanny deal with that. I'm not.
Yeah. But yes, I think the isolation is very much like the seed to everything else
Mm,
because Rory, basically everyone keep leaving him. Like his
yeah.
parents disappeared and then his older sister goes to the university, really like early in the book. I think it's like chapter 3 or
Hmm.
something. And he's like nanny left once he's old enough. And he basically has no one permanent that he's sure won't leave other than they.
Mm,
And I think that dynamic of like feeling everyone keeps leaving him and there's this one person who truly belongs to him, who will truly stay, only that person keeps falling apart is
yes.
pretty much the engine that moves Rory throughout the book.
Yeah,
Or
he has a real fear of abandonment, doesn't he? And it's very much like he lives his life. I don't know how else to describe it, but when I think of him, the image is just that like it feels like he's, when you're holding something so tightly that your knuckles have gone white, it feels like he's like that with everything in his life. It's like he can't let go, and it's really hard to see. And I found his character arc so interesting, and him as a character so interesting because you go into this book feeling so much empathy for him, and it's not to say that that empathy necessarily leaves, but you start to realize that his choices are maybe quite problematic as the book goes along. And I wondered what it was like for you to explore a character like that.
I think this was like the best description of Rory I ever heard, like that holding on for dear life.
Yeah.
And like the honest, weird truth is that I think I put more of myself in Rory than I did in Day. Like there's so much of myself like in him. And I
Hmm.
think that was one of the ways that I could like explore him because it's really hard to follow someone whose trajectory is making wrong decisions for the
Yeah.
right reasons. And I think if I didn't love him so much and if I didn't like I really wanted a happy ending for him
Yeah.
even as I wrote him doing like things that are not okay. And
He makes terrible choices, doesn't he?
yes, yes. And I came across readers who had very strong opinions about him, to say the least. But I really wanted to explore what it means for both of them to have such a power dynamic.
Mm,
Because not only to the person who doesn't have any power, but also what it creates in him. The fact that he has all the power, that he
mm,
became totally responsible to someone else, basically holding her life in his hands,
yeah.
and all the cascading ripples it can like send. And I
It's
think like trying to treat him with compassion as a writer while not excusing it is
mm.
like the line I tried to walk. Hopefully I succeeded.
I think you did. I do think it's quite a difficult task though, isn't it? To tread that line. It's difficult. And what I found really interesting as well is that the story isn't just told from Rory's perspective. You move us between Rory and Day's perspective. And at first I was like, oh, how is this gonna work? How are you gonna, explore her side of things? And actually it was so powerful that you did that because yeah we do I do think it maybe changes our opinion of him, seeing things from her perspective and seeing that actually like she doesn't have much agency within this dynamic, and it becomes really difficult as the story unfolds. Why was it important for you to share her perspective as well as Rory's?
I think because it's like for me, it was always the story, like it wasn't Rory's story. It
Hmm.
was the story of the relationship.
Yeah.
And if anything, it was more Day's story than
Mm.
Rory's. from the beginning, and I really wanted like to have, instead of telling people what to think, to like give them the picture and let them decide for themselves what they
Yeah.
think about the situation. And I think that's only possible when you get like the same situation from two points of view. Because otherwise it's either me telling them what to think or the character telling them what they think. And this was my way of like trying to let readers decide what they think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I loved that you did that, but I think it's really effective. It's really effective throughout, but it's especially effective towards the end of the book. And I won't give any spoilers, but it really adds to this sort of pace and tension of the situation that's unfolding, and you're going back and forth between the perspectives, and you're like, oh my God, like I don't know how this is going to end up. It was a stressful experience, Bar.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yay. But I'm sorry.
I was in bed like, oh my God, how am I supposed to go to sleep after this? But yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, it feels so crazy when you're saying something is so amazing when it's actually like a really haunting and unsettling story. But it is such an amazing book. It's so good. And I really want to I want to come back a little bit to the sort of setting of the book and how it's very sort of horror adjacent, I want to say. You know, how the place that they live is described, it should be quite idyllic and beautiful, you know. It seems like they've got this really big house with a lovely garden that's constantly got flowers and is very beautiful, and there's lakes and there's fields, and it should be ideal, but unfortunately it's not. It becomes quite a terrifying trap, essentially. And I really want to know what it was like creating this sort of claustrophobic atmosphere and how the sort of setting serves that.
Funnily enough, I didn't think it was horror pretty much until the agent told me.
Oh, wow.
Which is funny because I should have realized. And
were you describing it as a romance?
I described it as fantasy or as myth retelling. Like,
you're like, this is a lovely cozy romance. No, I'm kidding. They're like, Bart, I don't know how to tell you, but it's a horror.
I don't think I ever saw it as a romance.
No.
But yes, I definitely didn't realize. And I think it's because like genre definitions are so personal. I saw Sinners and I'm like, this is an amazing movie, but it's not horror.
So good.
It's a vampire movie.
Yes.
It's totally different.
Yes. Yeah.
And like everybody else around me is like, no, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong.
It's a vampire movie.
But it is also horror. It's not Twilight. Yeah. And I think my definition of horror is very different from most people's definition. But yes, at the time I was writing it, I was living in New Jersey, right next to a tiny forest. And when I mean right next to, I mean we were living inside the university, and it was the forest of the university grounds. So it was like 5 minutes walk from my front door. So I spent every day walking and like seeing deer and rabbits. And so you can say that I was living inside a honeysuckle mood board, basically.
I love that.
So taking that setting and like escalating the dread slowly felt very natural because I was so immersed in that sort of setting that it felt like the most natural place to start from.
Yeah, I mean, you do an incredible job because it does seem like, oh, this is somewhere that, like, I might see on Airbnb and go, I'd love to stay there. And then as the story unfolds, I was like, no, you know what? You can keep it. I don't want to go there. But it's the atmosphere that you create. It does feel so claustrophobic the more that we hear from Day's perspective, and the fact that she's unable to leave this place, it feels almost like a prison to her. And I do want to stay in the sort of horror conversation because I learnt a new term when I was doing my reading around this book, and the term is probably something that most writers are like, yeah, Hannah, I already know about this, but it's the category of ecological body horror. I think I've said that right. I hope so. And I didn't know about this term, but I wondered, because this sort of creation of Day and the sort of obsessive quest that Rory goes on to keep her alive as she's ever changing, it is very reminiscent of Frankenstein, and there are other horror stories that I'm sure are similar in that way. But I wondered what it was like delving into those aspects of the story, and then how comfortable are you with the sort of body horror?
Oh, I'm a wimp. I am the worst wimp that ever went about. And doesn't mean that I don't read body horror, but it means that like I need the body horror to be a tool for something rather than the thing that happens, like rather than the plot, sort of, if it
Yeah.
makes sense. Like Summer Suns by Lee-Mantello, I want to say, which is like the best body horror, but you need it. You have to have it for the plot. It's not, the plot is not there is body horror, but the body horror is the tool that serves it, sort of.
Have
So
you read
hopefully,
Our Wives Under the Sea?
so good. So good.
So
Yes.
good. Yeah. Yeah. That completely serves the story. Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Also made the mistake of listening to it on audiobook at night.
No.
Not the right choice.
No.
But yes, it was good enough that I couldn't stop.
You were not sleeping that night.
No.
So it's not something that you're necessarily comfortable with unless it serves the story.
Yes, I won't read body horror for the body horror sake, but I think it's such an amazing tool in our toolbox to use. And I love it when people use it, just not the thing itself, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because wimp.
So fair, because same. I am normally an absolute wimp when it came to horror, but this kind of horror I can handle. This makes sense to me, and as unsettling and haunting as it is, it isn't something that I'm like, oh no, I just can't read that. It's something that it meets my boundary of horror, let's say.
I'm very glad. As a horror wimp, I'm very glad.
But in terms of the sort of body horror aspects, obviously Rory is keeping his creation alive. Do you want to describe to the listeners what exactly he is doing with Day's body?
So basically at the turn of every season, he has to unravel her, basically take out all the wilted part and rebuild her from new flowers. And as the story progresses, as he becomes very obsessed with finding a way for her not to fall apart, for her to, if something happens to him, that she'll still be okay, he starts experimenting and trying different things every season change. And he starts building animal constructs to practice on, which are basically animals woven out of plants, and that he can try different things on. And I think I won't, like, it escalates. I won't say how because it's a bit of a spoiler, but like the level of experiment escalates and the things he tries to keep her from falling apart. Is it sort of a good description?
Yeah, I think so. I think you've done well without spoiling anything there. And I do think it gets more intense as the story goes on. And but I do think it's so fascinating, that the things he becomes capable of and the things that he thinks up. And I was really curious because, as you've said, that with each season change, it's when she needs to be sort of reinvented or, stuff needs to be added to her body to keep her alive. And he has a real fear of the seasons changing. And I think a lot of this novel, we explore the sort of Day's relationship, especially with animals and obviously the plants and how the environment is changed by the changing of the seasons. And I wondered what you were sort of thinking about in terms of our relationship to nature, and was climate change a factor in what you were writing? I'd love to know what the thought process for those things were.
Honestly, climate change wasn't much of a conscious thought, though it's impossible not to think about it. It's like, even if I wasn't thinking about it, it was
there, yeah.
But I just moved to New England, and the seasons there are insane. It's like seasons on steroids, basically. Everything is taking up to the max. Like the colors are saturated, and I kept being like, is this real? Are seasons like that? Like, I didn't know trees turn this color in like autumn. It doesn't seem possible. And I think this awe is one of the things that inspired like this specific way I decided to treat seasons in Honeysuckle. That sense of like seasons as something that is magical, because there was something in like suddenly rediscovering them, like when you see something from a different angle. So I was like, and they're like fireflies in summer and snow in winter, and like, what is happening here, and what is this magic? Possibly it's like taking a city girl out of the city for the first time and plonking her like next to a forest. But yes,
I love that. I would love to visit New England where the seasons are all dialed up, because in Manchester in England it is just constant rain. It's like whatever the season, there will be rain and grey skies, and that's what we get. So I would like to be somewhere where there's beautiful colours and it's vibrant, and yeah, it sounds much more exciting and beautiful than here.
Honestly, it really is. Like, I'm in Toronto right now, which is still very seasonal, but it's still different. And I miss that level of saturation that you got in like Boston and New Jersey and stuff like that.
Very jealous. I really want to come back to the process of Day and her creation, and I think we've kind of made it very apparent that autonomy, would that be the right word, is a big theme in the book in terms of her creation and her life and the sort of lack of choice and agency that she has. And I'd love to delve into those themes a bit more with you, and how you feel that they became so sort of central to this story.
I think because I started the story with a question about power dynamics, because this was the driving force behind me starting the story, thinking about power dynamics and what are the consequences and what is the interrelation between love and power and consent and autonomy as well. So I think, and because I started writing without I didn't have an answer. I just had a lot of questions. I just had what is happening here? So I think you can say that Honeysuckle is a 300 pages exploration of the line between consent and power and autonomy and love. And for me, this is the thing that if I could have readers thinking about one thing when they finish, it will be taking a moment to think what they think about it, how it relates to their lives. Not what I said, what they think.
What they think. Yeah.
Because I hope I didn't say anything. I hope I just put a huge question mark.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Important questions, though. Really important. And I think, that's another reason why it is important that we see Day's perspective in this, because you need to hear her voice and understand what the situation is doing to her. And there's a really interesting moment that struck me, and it's when Rory is around 17, so he considers that Day is also around 17, and he is asking Day if in her next transition, when he's, weaving more things to her body, if she would like for him to create breasts for her, because at the age that she's at, girls would be growing breasts. And if she, he's asking her if she would want to be like them. And it's kind of unclear if this is, isn't anything that she's raised, but it's unclear if it's it's unclear to her whether it's oh, you doing this because you want me to have breasts, or because you think, I will want that. And she responds to this sort of question that he asks her, but I'm not a girl. And it made me think a lot about gender and what it means to be a girl and a woman, and how sexualized our bodies are. What was going through your mind when you were writing about Rory's perceptions of her body?
I think I didn't set out to write a feminist book, but I think it's impossible the moment you designate someone as a woman, as a girl, even if it's just physically, it's impossible to escape the way we are perceived as something to be obtained. And I think before she has a couple of interactions with boys, strangers, and the first thing she feels is that they look at her differently, that they look at her skin like it's something they can unravel and look under. And I do think it was something the line between being a person and being a person that is a sexual object to someone else, and how being perceived as a sexual object affects us, is something that I was very interested in, and that I very much tried to walk through A's perspective, what it meant for her to be wanted that way or perceived that way, especially when she's not a girl, she's not a person.
Yeah.
She is something else, and her sexuality works differently, if you can even call it that. So what happens when you come to look at it from outside, sort of the experience of being a girl? Does it make sense in any way?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And you've made me think about, when you mentioned the moment where that she's touched by the boys when they're young and they see her and they touch her. It made me remember that moment and think, she is actually touched so often without any consent whatsoever. People just think that they can just grab onto her, and it's so gross that that is her existence, is just a constant series of people doing things to her that she's got no control over. And it's, you know, it's really, really sad. But I think, whilst I've made it sound really sad, and it is a haunting and affecting book, there is hope in there, is what I will say. There is hope to be had. So I don't want people to just think, oh my God, like, no, this is going to be so traumatic. It's handled with a lot of care and thought. I do want to be clear about that. I want to ask you quickly about the university aspect, because his sister is at university, she's studying, and she encourages him to come and join her. And I wondered what you felt this sort of transition to uni does for Rory, and how it maybe shapes him as a person, if it does at all.
I think it definitely shapes him. And I think it's like a moment of the world opening, because for him, it was always like it was him and his sister, and then it was him and they. And suddenly there's a whole world and it's full of people. And he suddenly had friends that are not dependent on him in any way, that just want to hang out with him. And he's suddenly torn between like his life as a normal teenage boy who has normal teenage friends and goes out to eat pizza and like eat ice cream and do all the teenage stuff that you're not supposed to do and do anyway, and being basically the sole person keeping his best friend alive. And I think it was really important to show this duality, because otherwise you're so enmeshed in like, yeah, it's normal. Of course it's normal that he's keeping her alive, that this is his life. Ah, cool. And
They're needed, aren't they, to question what he's doing?
yes, definitely. And to have an outside perspective on their bubble, which can be very bubbly. And I was fresh out of my master's, and I love universities, and like I love the librarians who helped me during the research. So I think that love sort of found its way to the book.
I love that. Librarians are very special people, and they should be celebrated much more. So I love that mention there. I want to ask you, before we move into your recommendation and what is next for you, I want to finally ask in regards to the book. The book is split into 6 sections, I think. Is that right?
I think, yes.
7, 6?
6,
and
I think.
Prior to each section, there is an epigraph. Is that the right word? If I use the right word, great. There is an epigraph. And I'd love to know what the process was like of selecting those words and quotes that you feature at the start of each section of the book.
So I think 4 of them were very, very easy. There are 2 that are from the beginning of the story in the Mabinogion and from the end of the story, sort of bookending the whole myth. And like of course I came back to the story and I reread it while writing, and I always adored it. I read it many times, and it was always obvious to me that I need to have the source material, like what I'm very loosely retelling there. And then there are 2 quotes from Sylvia Plath, and that poem is one of my favorites. And it actually, I had it like printed on my board in front of my computer while writing. It's something like I kept thinking about it while writing. So it was really enmeshed in the experience. Like it was always obvious to me that I wanted these quotes there.
I love that.
Yeah. And then when it became obvious that I have like 6 parts and that I'm getting to have epigraphs for each, I set out to look for 2 more, which was when I found that really gorgeous quote from basically a book that is a dictionary for the language of flowers. That is sort of like part of the inspiration for the book's name. And the last one is another retelling of the Mabinogion, but in verse. And it's gorgeous. It's such a gorgeous poetry book, I want to say. So it's up there as a plot. There, like, and
that's amazing. I mean, it's not a common thing, is it, to have so many of them?
No. And it's not an easy process as a writer, because you have to get the rights for each and every one, and it takes so long.
Oh my gosh. But they're so perfectly selected, like they work so well. And I really enjoyed. I mean, I'm so fascinated by authors' choices too, in terms of choosing those things and like what those things mean to them. So it's always nice to hear. Before I ask for your recommendation, Bar, I would love to know what is next for you. You're just releasing your book baby into the world, and here I am demanding what is next.
So I am working on the next book.
Amazing.
And it's also like in the, let's call it fantasy realm, because I think Honeysuckle doesn't really sit in one genre in any coherent way. So and I'm not sure I know how to write in a single like box, but it's like I'm at the stage where every time I tell someone about it, I feel like I'm losing like parts of it because it's like half dream-like in my head. And every time I try to translate it, something goes away. So I'll just say that it's in the works and I'm really excited about it. I've been like dying to work on it for a while finishing the edits for Honeysuckle. So I'm very, very excited.
I'm very excited. I can't wait to read whatever you write next. But I hope that you enjoy getting to celebrate Honeysuckle. I know that your launch in Canada is this evening when we're recording, so I'm super excited for you for that. And you deserve all the success with Honeysuckle because it is an incredible book and I loved it so much. So thank you for writing it.
Thank you so much. It's like, thank you. This makes me so happy.
Now, before I let you go, I can't let the listeners down. I do have to find out what your recommendation is. It can be anything that you'd like to recommend to the listeners. It can be books, TV, film, anything goes. What would you like to recommend?
Is there a cap? How many can I recommend?
Whatever you want to give us, we appreciate.
Okay, so I adored Charlotte Cross's The Brides. I basically I wrote my thesis about Victorian vampires, and I spent I think months because we're in with the same publisher. Like every time I emailed my editor, and I was like, yes, and I heard about Charlotte's book, and it sounds so amazing. By the way, I wrote my thesis about vampires until they broke and finally sent it to me.
I love that. You worked hard to get your early copy of that.
I worked really hard, and then they were like, you could just ask and we'll just send you anything. So I probably shouldn't have worked that hard, but I worked really hard for that book. And it's like, it lived up to it. It's amazing.
I love that you've both come on the podcast and both recommended each other's books. I love that.
I also adored The Geomagician by Jennifer Mandula. It's coming out in 2 weeks, I want to say, at the end of the month.
I haven't heard of this.
Oh my God, it's amazing. It's historical fantasy, Victorian-ish, with dinosaurs. And it's it's a political fantasy, but it's also cozy and it's also a romance and it's so smart. And it's like the sort of book that you can tell how much research went behind it. So everything feels seamless, but also like ironclad. You can't question a single bit. The world feels real and like you can smell the scents and it's so good. One of the 5 books I'm reading is I basically badgered Jennifer until she sent me a draft of the next book in the series because I was like, I need it now.
Oh my God, I love that.
Like I need my brain to stop buzzing with publication week so I can give it the attention it deserves because I really want this book.
Oh my God, I love that you've done that and you've said, no, I need the draft. Sorry.
Yes.
I don't care if
I don't care.
Send it.
It's that not edited, fine, whatever. I need to know what happens next.
You're like, I've only written the first 20 words. You're like, great, send them over.
Honestly, it was pretty much like that. I got a full draft, but when she told me she had the first chapter, I was like, okay, so when is it in my inbox? Can it be today? And I also say that a couple of books coming out in May, basically the best thing about being a debut is that you get to read all these amazing books before they come out. And this is like the biggest brag and the best perk, like hands down. So there's Homebound by Portia Lan, which is multi-timelines, sci-fi, queer, the sort of book that it makes you want to cry, but also feels like a warm hug.
Oh.
A bit like, this is a very bad comparison, but it reminds me of how I felt when reading Becky Chambers' T-Monk series, I want to say, Robert and Monk duology. Okay, one more. And Deathbringer by Sonia, oh my God, I'm going to butcher her name, Pagliani, I want to say, and she will kill me. It's also amazing. And I will stop now, but if you let me, I can continue for an hour.
I mean, you've given us an excellent selection of recommendations there. And I don't think I've read any of them. So I've got lots to look forward to there.
They're amazing. They're so good.
I have absolutely loved chatting to you today, Bar, and I absolutely loved Honeysuckle. So thank you so much for coming on A Pair of Bookends. It's been so lovely.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
And before I let you go, I'd love to know where the listeners can find you online.
I'm on Instagram It's basically my name, Bar Fridman-Tell.
Perfect.
And there are a lot of cat photos. Sorry.
Great. Perfect. Cats and books is all we need. So perfect. My cats have been trying to break into this room throughout this episode. So if anybody heard any banging doors, that was them trying to break in. They are tiny. I don't know how they're managing to make so much noise. But lastly, I will say thank you so much again, Bar. Thank you, listeners, for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to review and subscribe. If you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on Twitter and TikTok. You can also find extra content over on our Patreon. I'll be putting links to all of our socials in the show notes, and to grab yourselves a copy of Honeysuckle wherever you are. You can do that via the show notes, and to give Bar a follow, also in the show notes. So go have a look. Please do come and let me know when you've finished Honeysuckle, listeners, because I am desperate to chat to more people about it. But lastly, thank you so much again, Bar, and thank you, listeners, for listening. Goodbye.